in any sport. There's a defense and the offense. Those on the defense are preventing the other team from scoring, but are not advancing. And that's how it is for several Christians. And unfortunately, you can't experience God's promises over your life like that. And like a defense, you can only defend so much that you will eventually get scored on or begin to tolerate ungodly things. God wants you to utilize his living word over your life. And that's what the offense is, advancing towards the enemy front lines. This is the side that Billy Graham, an ambassador for Christ, who God used around the world during the 20th century, and another man named Emilio, a nationally recognized Dominican Christian rap artist. And even though both men live completely different lives, they have delivered messages that are unnatural to the public ear. Messages that explain why and how to be on the offense for Christ. Both men also know that to be on the offense, you must carry your cross and follow Jesus. First and foremost, the reason why we have to be on the offense is because the cross is an offense. Billy Graham preached about this in 1958 during a time when America needed a spiritual revival. Doesn't that sound familiar for us? Also, well, some of you are wondering, why is the cross an offense? Well, it's a reminder that you're not perfect. Something that we don't really want to hear. Picture it like a magnifying glass, exposing the sins in our lives. In Romans chapter 5, verse 7, it says, "For when we were in the realm of the flesh, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in us, so that we bore fruit for death. Our flesh naturally sins. But I have some good news. A man named Jesus Christ, the Son of God, has been crucified, and his blood shed on the cross is what makes you a new creation. And I'm not done yet. 3 days later, he rose from the grave and forever conquered death." That's what being on the offense is about. Yeah. Confronting people about their sins so that they can eventually know that through Christ they are a new light in the world that people need to see. Yeah. Well, how does being on the offense look like? Well, to be on the offense, you cannot conform to the patterns of this world. Yeah. Emilio mentions in the Psalms that the things we do must reflect Christ, even if the world labeled us flat out intolerant, crazy, or even alien-like. Think you cannot conform to the craves of the flesh. Think about it. How can God use you if your mind is so saturated with following the crowds? In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, it says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is." God wants you to lay your pain and your worries into his hands so that you can have peace within yourself and peace knowing that he loves you. And he wants you to intentionally dig into his word so that through his word, he can speak to you. When I think about God using someone, I think about King Solomon. In the book of 1 Kings, it talks about how God just poured his wisdom into Solomon and gave him so much wealth. But as Solomon is human, he slept with several women and he gave into idolatry. However, through Christ, we have a second chance. Yeah. Lastly, to be on the offense, you must be willing to follow Jesus. When people see that you're following Jesus, they're going to think, "Man, this kid is weird." And then you reply by saying, "I'm on the path that Jesus is on." And then they'll reply by saying, "Well, see you later, dude. Peace." The love that Jesus shows is out of this world. So that means when you show that love, of course you're going to stand out. Yeah. For Billy Graham, when he experienced criticism, when he was on the offense, President Truman called him a counterfeit. For Emilio, he was a former drug dealer. His past anger and his past mistakes could have prevented him from fully surrendering to God. Jesus never said that picking up your cross would be like carrying a twig. It's a reminder of what you did and who you were. But thanks be to Christ, we have him carrying the load that we can't carry. Yeah, wow. Don't let the enemy deceive you into thinking that it's not worth being on the offense. Remember, when you're on the offense for Christ, you're guaranteed to victory. Yeah.